Okay, this is how you can build a shake roof using all material that is not from a mill. In this example I used a cedar log for building my shakes, and you should always look for this first before you even start this project. If you can't find anywhere to get shakes from or shingles, then it's pointless to bother building the roof from the material around you on your site for your log cabin. In this case, this had a lot of bugs in it, and I kind of had to work through and find the good stuff to use. I also grabbed a whole bunch of saplings that would be laying as nailing strips from the ridge cap all the way down my log cabin. They're fairly straight and also made out of cedar. And I organized them from the thickest one to the thinnest one so I could lay them that way on the roof. Oh yeah, this is where I've put my ridge cap on, and the two uprights. It's pretty much the first starting point you need to get your roof going. And you can see I've got one gable truss nailed on down up there. There's more than one way to build a roof system, and this one I kind of went nuts with the hardware to try and make sure that all the gable trusses were anchored on really well. Oh, a little point here is you see how I've nailed these, I think they're called runners, about a foot apart all the way down the gable trusses, just to make sure that they're equally spaced, and you had to mine were a foot apart based on the 26-inch shingle. You can see here from the bottom side the same thing, and a little bit of my truss system. You should probably look up how to build a truss system, or even the basics of how they work. This one's fairly simple. It's only about 10 feet across, so I didn't need a lot of complexity. They're about 6 inches thick, these beams right here, and there's very little flex on these things right here, except for those runners that have, well, the nailing strips, what do you want to call them, that the shakes hammer onto. They might have an inch of stress or flex when I stand on them, but 180 pounds. A little bit of my bolting that I use to try and hold up the gable ends onto the ridge, and I left all the bark on just because I like making things simple and fast, and I was trying to get my roof on before the snow came, which I barely did. Okay, and here's an example. I'm just gonna, the next picture I'll show you step by step what I did on this side. The other side is fairly finished, but yeah, you start off with these two gable ends nailed up, and like I say, bolted and screwed together and reinforced to make sure they didn't slip. I also rebarred all those gable ends into the log cabin so they would not shift off. These are 16-inch long, half-inch rebars that I drilled out through, well, from the gable end straight through the log cabin. Poor little drill. And as you can see, I just dropping the rebar in right now, all the way down. Obviously it was raining, so I had a tarp over the whole system whenever I wasn't working. But yeah, fun project. Fairly cheap. I don't think I put more than 40 bucks into the roof. Mainly nails, rebar, and bolts. Okay, I've put these saplings about a foot apart in order to line them up for the 26-inch shingles that I'm putting in there. You can see they're not nailed in yet, but they will be once I've lined them up and turned them around. Until that's a 4-foot long doweling that's about a half-inch wide, and I'm just at this point measuring to make sure it's a fairly flat and level nailing field here, and the strips should be flat with each other, or the saplings I mean. So I would rotate them until I found the flattest edge, and then I'd nail them down. This is just the side view. I can see where I've run a string line from the peak down to the last runner, making sure they're all straight in line with each other, just so you don't have a crooked roof you're not keeping track of. And here's my first round. I cut it at 26 inches, of course. Well, this one was 26 inches. And that's a 3-pound hammer and a wedge. And you can see it's an old burned out stump that might be about 100 years old. It's amazing cedar can last in the forest for that length of time. A lot of bugs This particular one had a black ant colony inside it, and obviously it took out the insides of the stump, but the outside still had some good material in there, and I just had to kind of clean up each shingle, get rid of the bugs. I don't know if I mentioned it, but yeah, the idea is to shingle the bottom 1/3 of a tree, because you'll find that most branches are on the top, and that's exactly where the knots are, and it's really hard to shingle where knots are located on a tree. You won't get straight shingles. And this is about a 1/2 inch shingle I'm doing. It looks like about a 1/2 inch. Yeah, it is. But you can see the grain when you look down. It's fairly straight. On the right hand side, of course, there's bugs that I will chop that out, but a nice straight grain is important so that you can lay the shingle on the roof and it won't be twisted up or warped or anything weird like that, and the rain won't go underneath it or the wind won't go underneath it. But I stacked up a nice little pile of shingles there. Out of a round like that, you can get about 40 feet in length, you know, going along, of a 26-inch long shingle, I guess. And there's my froe, my hammer, my wedge, my mallet, and there's my shaving horse and my draw knife. Shingles a lot of times still have some flaws in them, even on perfect shingles. Pretty much have to shave off some of the flaws with this sort of apparatus, and they usually shingles or shakes come off the block looking like crinkled chips or that sort of thing, riffles, and you just kind of smooth them out to make them nice and flat. Well, relatively flat. The first set of shingles on the roof at the bottom are always the half size ones, and those ones are about 13 inches long, and I banged them up on the first sapling. And as you can see from the side view here, I put a string line in, a little bit crooked here, but the second set of shingles will go on the next sapling and will completely cover the other ones, just so it gets a proper water flow off of these shingles from one to the other. So the 26 inchers will go on next. And here's just an example of the fact that I'm trying to cover the saplings with the shingles, and you can see an extra couple inches just so are laid over the sapling, just so that it won't get wet and have water run on it, so all the shingles take all the rain. And it's always a good idea to just grab all your shingles and, well, for a row, let's say, and bring them all up so you're not going up and down your ladder. So this way you go up with a bunch, with your hammer, maybe a chisel to modify anything, bunch of nails, and run a strip worth of shakes like this. I put a couple nails in each. You can see I've left some of the burnt out parts of the stump still there, just because you know, you only have so much material to work with, and you take the good, bad, and the ugly, but it won't cause any problems in this example. And I do a water test once in a while, make sure that the water does not leak through the shingles anywhere, and that I'm doing everything right. You're probably wondering where I got the water. There's a creek just nearby that I tapped into about 40 feet up. Had a 100-foot hose, and it's a good way to test things out before it does rain. And get near the peak of one side. It might look like I'm putting my shakes on crooked, like if you look at the log cabin, but I actually don't have a square cabin. It's actually like 12 feet at the back and 10 feet at the front, so I had to do some fancy adjustments, so don't worry about that. The final ridge cap I'm running, of course, did 26-inch long shingles all the way up. The last ones are also only 13 inches, and I made sure they met right in the middle, right where the string line is, and filled them all in. At the end of all that, I put on a zinc strip on the very top, because obviously you can see I'm inside a bunch of trees where there's potential for moss growth, and the zinc strip actually kills moss. So on the very top, the zinc strip may also cover, of course, the peak or the ridge, so that you don't get water leaking through the ridge. And I didn't know how to build a ridge cap properly, so that was my ridge cap, was the zinc strip, which was like 3 inches wide or whatever. And that's my thing. There you are. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks.